Hello, and welcome to Communities First, our Community Candor series, where we're focusing on finances. Today is Financial Friday, and we are having a conversation about small businesses. Our topic today, our topic today is going to be talking about technology and safeguarding yourself against fraud. So we have some wonderful guests today. We're going to ask you to introduce yourself. So, Mike, if you could introduce yourself and let us know who you are.
I'm Michael Williams. I'm with WillNet Consulting, network specialist, and I do many different things as well as network security. I help protect companies against their vulnerabilities as far as internet-based and network-based. So.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for sharing about yourself. Can we have Karen share with us about Elga Credit Union and why this topic is of interest to you?
Yes, thank you, Essence. I am Karen Church, CEO of Elga Credit Union, 43 years here. We've seen a lot of change with technology and the way we serve members. Technology comes with great convenience, and it also comes with things that you have to be aware of so perpetrators can't get into your information. We're going to share with you some of the things the credit union does to protect our member accounts. And I will tell you, we have about 3,000 small business accounts along with 70,000 consumer accounts. And it's really important that we make sure everybody's information is held privately, safely, and we have a lot of protections in place to keep the bad guys out.
And we also want to thank you, Karen, for being our sponsor today. We appreciate the partnership and have thoroughly enjoyed working with you. Now we're going to ask our president and CEO, Glenn Wilson, to tell us why this series is important and why this topic is of importance as well.
Yeah, well, I can talk about the topic. Well, I'll start just while we're here. Sorry, but Glenn Wilson, president and CEO of Communities First Inc. We're definitely here to be a community asset with information and high quality content from great trusted people in the community to be able to provide you empowering information to make sure that you know that either you as an individually or that your business is protected and safeguarded through all these different financial difficulties that people are experiencing related to COVID-19. So we wanted to, as a staff, to remain flexible and nimble and dynamic to what the community needed. So our special projects manager put together a great series of topics. Renee, she's not on today. Hope you're enjoying your vacation, but I'm sure you're watching this video. We're here to just make sure that we're providing you that information. Our motto is to empower people and build community. And the best way to empower people is to provide them information that's not just provided, but to give it to them in a way in which they can implement it. And today's session about can you spot a scam is very important, not for just a nonprofit organization, but it's also important for small businesses and individuals to make sure that you're safeguarding yourself against fraud, because there's so many different types of fraud. Even before we started this video, we talked about just different experiences that we've had about fraud. And we know that you taking on this information today is just some things that you can do to try to safeguard your business so it's not open for people to just have a field day, not only on your business identity, but it's also just protecting you in the long run. So thanks a lot for joining us. Understand we are a 501c3 organization, so we appreciate those. Even though we didn't ask, we appreciate those that's made donations, through this platform, for those that always provide feedback. So thank you so much for joining us today. We also want to offer you to register. You can go to tinyurl.com/CFI Building Wealth, where we send out an email of different content for this series. So if there's some information that you need, or if you just want to continue to be a part of these dialogues about ways to build wealth within your business or you as an individual, please sign up for that link. And don't forget also to share this link. So as you're online, please share this link to reach many more people.
All right, so as we think about our topic, we have to think about what is business identity theft. And this is something that involves the identity theft of the actual business. So where there's someone that's either trying to impersonate or take advantage through the misuse of key business identifiers, credentials, the manipulation or falsification of business filings and records, or other criminal activities intended to derive illicit gain to the detriment of the victimized business and to defraud creditors and suppliers, financial institutions, the business owners and officers, unsuspecting consumers, and even the government. So thinking about that, that sounds like something that fits right into our Financial Friday series because it can be extraordinarily costly if you are a victim of business identity theft. And so there are a lot of reasons why businesses are targeted by identity thieves. Businesses tend to have larger bank accounts than individuals. There's an ease of opening an account sometimes that's associated with businesses. Invoicing and payment terms, maybe less scrutiny because they can make larger purchases than perhaps an individual might. So there are lots of reasons why businesses are a target. I want to ask Karen about the safeguards that you have in place to protect your business clients.
We, like I say, have a lot of protections for the online piece of it and firewalls and different practices that are kept to make sure that account information can't be let out. When it comes to opening an account, we do a really thorough job vetting out the business, making sure that all the individuals have the identification that match who they are. They have to bring in articles of incorporation or their DBA papers. We check with Laura to make sure they're in good standing with the state of Michigan. And all individuals and businesses are run through OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. I'm happy to report we went through our years of records of opening business accounts, and we have not had identity theft on the account opening level, which also leads to the fact that we don't have identity theft loans coming through the business channel, which is great news. And I believe that the relationship that's built with your financial institution helps safeguard these businesses as they do more and the business becomes more familiar with them. It's easy to know if it's them or if it's somebody pretending to be them. I don't know how to I would say the biggest risk in our institution for business identity theft is when someone steals the information off checks that are being sent out, or perhaps compromises a credit card for a business or a debit card for a business, and they then use those instruments to extract money out of the account. That's been the only thing we've had to deal with, and it's not easy. It's time consuming. It's expensive for the credit union because we have to cover those losses. The business is not liable if they have not authorized the use of their account or their funds. They have to be reimbursed. However, it takes a lot of work on their end to report to the police, sometimes the Secret Service if it's a chain of events that have happened, or if it's a large enough dollar amount. Time to report all of that and to protect yourself, contact the credit bureaus, making sure that they know that you're compromised. All of that is not easy. And as we know, business owners are very busy trying to run their businesses and they don't have time for all of that. I would say the best safeguard of all is that a business owner or their accountant, bookkeeper, checks their account daily. They set up alerts if something of a certain size comes through. With mobile and online banking today, it's very easy to be on top of your accounts always. And we always encourage our members, whether they're business or consumer type accounts, take the time to look at your account. Don't just take for granted everything's okay. You want to be on top of it. Checking it daily is okay. There's no cost to check it daily. It only takes a few seconds to run through your transactions and make sure everything that's showing is actually yours. with things like wire transfers, automatic payments, so on and so forth. Again, you want to check your account to make sure everything's good. But I will assure you, in wire transfers, there are typically dual authentication processes set up. So if it's initiated, it would require some sort of contact to you, typically through information we have on file, to make sure that you are requesting what's being asked of us. Business checks that are copied, just pay attention again. If your checks are copied, you want to notice it right away so the financial institution can put a stop on those checks or return anything that's hit your account, and that will help them not sustain so much in loss, and it'll help you stop the mess that's coming into your account quicker. So again, good attention to your account will help all of those things that we've experienced here in the theft of your information being used.
So it sounds like one of the most important things is for businesses to be proactive in reviewing their accounts and doing their due diligence to know where things stand to help protect themselves from all of the headaches and frustrations. When you talk about contacting the FBI and going through all of that kind of a process and having to try and get your money back in certain instances, that just sounds like a huge headache that nobody wants to have. Glenn, can you talk a little bit about any safeguards that have been put in place at Communities First to address fraud?
Yeah, so I guess the thing about fraud is people don't realize how easy it is to become a victim of fraud. So you have to think about the very simple things from, so like when we sign documents, in locations, like if there's any information on it, like it's just certain places you shouldn't be signing documents if there's any information on it. Also about, scanning in information or having locked cabinets that multiple people do not have access to. Sometimes it gets easy because, you find it as an organization, even when you're smaller. If you only have 4 or 5 people in the office, like, oh, what's wrong with somebody having the passcode or somebody having the password to certain things? And then you find out very quickly, somebody can open it up and then they forget to close it. And then if somebody's in your building, when people are doing fraud, they look for ways and they look for your weaknesses and they look for ways to take advantage of your business and or your organization. So we do that. We don't have multiple signers, on different accounts. Also, we're always following up with our IT to make sure that, if emails or different things that are coming out, that the staff notifies everyone if certain phishing emails are coming out. So then people are just notified of it immediately. I think that's the one thing to stay in front of it, is like just to think that nothing is wrong. When you know something is off, it's always better to check it. So if you think that somebody's in your accounts or you think somebody's in your email, because that's happened where you'll open up your email and say you'll see, like, well, I don't remember reading those 10 emails. Like those were closed emails. That's when you have to say, okay, even if you don't think so, just immediately change your password, look at your sent email, reach out to your IT department. Also we just, we have credit card holders, 2-person, authentication, sorry, to make sure that things are being authenticated not by one person, but 2 people. That's always a good thing. And then just making sure that your information is always protected on a hard drive or external hard drives to make sure it's backed up. So if anybody comes in and corrupts your information, that you're always able to get your hands on it if you need it. So, I mean, that's just a few things that we've done. And then just from a technology level, just making sure that our IT, which is online today, just making sure that we are keeping our things safeguarded against fraud.
And I think one thing that's key to think about is we're talking about people who are making a career out of trying to defraud people and trying to steal assets of others. So they're very creative. They're always trying to innovate and think of new ways to attack. I was actually watching something the other day, and it was something so simple that you may never think about. But as we are in this time where we're using technology probably in excess, they were talking about how looking around at what's in your background, right, might give key indicators about where you're physically located, who your clients are, what your interests are, and that there are folks that were actually using that to try and hack passwords. So, if I look in the background for, in Mike's home office there, what are the books that he's reading? If he's reading a lot of, Isaac Asimov or whoever it might be, maybe that's one of his passwords. So people are just getting really, really creative when it comes to trying to, commit identity theft and trying to steal from others. So we just have to keep that in mind and try to be one step ahead and try and be really cautious. I think it would be really interesting to have each of you share perhaps a story about how your organization was able to maybe thwart an attempted identity theft or attack. So I know, Mike, you've probably seen this in the IT world quite a bit. So can you share maybe a story of something that has happened either with a business company or your own company?
Well, I guess one of the key points is quite a while ago, a company that I do work for was having some issues with email coming through that they didn't quite recognize, as well, like you were mentioning earlier. And they fully appeared like they were coming from within the company. And what had happened was the attacker had actually breached the email exchange server and obtained passwords for key people. Now, what had to happen was, we had to go through a lot of settings and stuff in order to resolve it, but what it turned out to be was that this specific attacker was trying to send information via the user that they gained access to try to gain more access and work their way up the chain to possibly the admin account or whatnot, so that they can further gain access and take control of accounts. And what happens with that is potentially, if you can send information from the company that you're working for or that they're infiltrating, they can send links that will allow that will have you try to log in and gain your information. So it's really, really important, as you had mentioned, changing passwords often. The second that you think that you might be infiltrated, immediately change your password. And it's actually pretty pressing that anybody within your organization, if there is an infiltration, should change their passwords as well. And then look at what you need to secure your servers. That was actually not a drastic case, but it's one of the most common cases that happens is email exploits. Most of the time, they don't really have any information. They're just sending you information to gain more information, and that's the hack, is that deception. They're sending out a kind of a basic email that might have a link to it. You go to that link, you log into an app that you may be using. Now they have your information. They can log in and manipulate it however they want. But I think one of the key components is having either somebody in your staff that can handle IT instances, or having a third-party company that can handle IT instances too, because those kind of things can really get carried away or left insecure if you don't have somebody that can handle and research and track that down. So.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key point. Although she's not with us today on the stream, I think this was a good comment. That this is good information, obviously, but we have to remember to update our passwords and signers when we experience turnover. And so that's a key point. Making those accounts either inactive or preventing them from signing in so that they can't gain access to critical business information. But I think even as we think about our own individual passwords, how many times have we used the same password for multiple accounts? And we might experience a hack on one account and it's, not a big deal. but do we ever stop and think about how that carries over into other accounts that we may have where we've used the exact same password? So,
Yes.
yeah. Karen, do you have a story that you're able to share about maybe a business that you've encountered, or even at Elga, where there was some identity theft?
Well, we were able to thwart identity theft through an example that Michael just shared. One of our business owners' emails had been compromised, and information was appearing to be from them to Elga for information, and it was what we call a phishing attempt, where they were seeking more information so they can put all those pieces together to eventually get money out of the account. We were able to contact that member and explain to them what we were receiving, and so they made changes to their email information and found out that it had gone to many different places, not just the credit union. So it's good that we were able to reach out and connect with that company to let them know that we were receiving emails that did not seem appropriate, and they were able to help it. We have also had cases where we've been able to help with check information that's been stolen and checks trying to come in to be paid, where we've been able to reach out to the business to verify, is this something that you have initiated? It's out of the ordinary, and they have been able to give us the information to stop that. And like I say, if it does come through, if the business owner knows that something's hit their account and gets with us right away, we have time to return that, and nobody loses other than the bank that perhaps took the check in the first place. So it's great when we can work together with our business account holders to stop that kind of thing. It saves everyone time and money.
I entirely agree. We just have to be mindful, right, and proactive and monitor those accounts. And I think that's the thing that continues to come up, whether we're talking about emails, we're talking about other business accounts that we might have, or financial accounts, just being prudent and making sure that we're reviewing those things and watching. Glenn, can you share a story about a possible cyber attack or identity theft issue that you've seen?
Yeah, one I can think of here, what happens a lot when you're a small business, when you have to pay vendors. One of the easiest ways for people to steal credit card information is over the phone. It's the information that you give. What I found is that if you're going to give anybody your credit card number over the phone, you should ask them one question right from the very beginning. Are you typing this directly into your system, or are you writing this down on a piece of paper? And you would be scared to find out how many people and how many other small businesses will be, just say if you're working with a mom and pop shop, but some of these are larger small businesses. You will call the owner, you'll say, hey owner, I want to go ahead and pay this invoice. And they'll say, okay, hold on, let me get your credit card information. And you're thinking to yourself, hey, they're putting this in their system. And you'll find out that they just pulled a piece of paper out their pocket, they're writing your credit card number down, and they're walking around with it until they get back to their computer that night to put your invoice in. And they will drop, and it's happened all the time, and people would drop that credit card number, and next thing you know, your credit card number's out there, and somebody just walks by and pick it up. Or when you're giving somebody a credit card number because you're trying to get a bill paid over the phone, make sure that person is the authorized individual to take the credit card information, because what you also will find is that some people will just be trying to help. You'll call and say, I want to make this payment, and they'll say, oh, I'll take your credit card information, and they'll take it from you and then give it to the authorized person, and that individual that you gave your credit card number to could take it, take a picture, send it to anyone. So what we always do here is, if we have to pay any bill over the phone with the credit card, we ask them to either send us a link if they have a link that we can make a direct payment. If they don't have a link, we ask them if they'll take a check. If they don't take checks, we say, well, can you put it right into your system? And if your system is available to send a direct email, that lets us know that process, because any credit card company that you work with, if you put the credit card information in, it will send you an immediate receipt right after you make that transaction. So that lets you know if people actually have their systems secure and in place. to be able to get you those, those receipts as soon as possible. If you find out that you gave them your credit card number and then they emailed your receipt 45 minutes later, always look at the timestamp on the actual receipt to actually see when it was processed, because that lets you know if they actually put it in the system when they said over the phone. And if they don't, you can call them back and say, hey, I know you didn't put that in the system when we were on the phone and you wrote it down, because we talked at, I'll give you my credit, just say right now it's 12:25 and you didn't charge my card until 1 o'clock. So, that's a way to just double check. And yeah, they might seem a little offended, but that lets them know that you take your credit card security seriously. And then you also ask them to shred it. If they did write your credit card, you ask them to actually let you know, or send them an email and say, can you verify that you shredded my credit card information? If they weren't supposed to have it in the first place and write it down, you ask them to shred that and then ask them to confirm that by email. So if something happens, you have the timestamp of the receipt, know that they didn't do it, and you have to keep track of those things. So that's, one easy way that a lot of people get, fraud when it comes to business credit cards.
I think that's a great example, Glenn, and I'm glad that we have instituted that policy here, because think about, paying for a meal at a restaurant and you're paying by phone with a credit card. And, they have, restaurants historically have quite a bit of turnover. But, here you have whoever the person is that answered the phone, writing that down, and how safe and secure do you feel that your information really is if that person may or may not be there in the next week, right? So we always ask to, like Lynn said, we ask to speak to the manager or the owner to take that information. And it might seem, overly cautious, but at the very same time, we haven't had instances of fraud in that way. And it lets that business know that you really do take things very seriously. So they might steal the next person's information, but they're not going to probably attack you because they know that you're watching and observing. So let's move into talking a little bit about cyber vulnerability. Small businesses are especially vulnerable because they typically do not have the layers of security and oversight, account alerts, or an IT department even, that maybe larger businesses might have. So if we add to that the fact that most businesses remain completely oblivious to the concept and risk of business identity theft, which is part of the reason we're having this conversation today, because there's some simple things that people can do, but then they also might want to look at hiring a firm to assist them with their IT. For many small businesses, just keeping up with the everyday demands of running a business is difficult enough. So they don't have the time to review their accounts, do the reconciliation, computer security updates. So that leaves small businesses open to being attacked. So Mike, can you give us just some ideas and thoughts? And you talked a little bit about this before, about the types of IT breaches that you see, and then what is the purpose and intent? Like, why are people even spending their time, effort, and energy doing this?
Okay, so absolutely. So there is many different vulnerabilities, many different ways that you can become vulnerable to attacks. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is there are active attackers that are, doing it live right at the moment. But I think one of the big threats is the fact that there are bots and scripts out there that will be running on a constant basis. And they will see a vulnerable domain because they're scrubbing the internet, and then it will gain the information that it can gain because of the lack of security, and then be available to whoever, whether they're putting it on a list to sell on the dark web, or they're using it themselves to make these attacks on your business. So even though there are a lot of active attackers out there, it's unfortunately there's stuff out there all the time that is just happening automatically. Now, the types of vulnerabilities that there are, amongst the email exploits that we talked about, which are very prevalent, some are kind of complex and some are very simple, where you can see them immediately just by looking at the content of the email. And then some which are spoofing because of weak setup mail servers, that if you don't lock those mail servers down, somebody can actually send an email that looks like it's coming right from, say, Glenn, and make transactions to their credit unions, or do business in that facet to different vendors. But amongst the email exploits, there's also network security exploits, that if your network is exposed to the internet and somebody actually gains access to your network, they can gain information that way, depending on whether it's files with HIPAA type information within it that can now expose many other people. If you have files on your server that have other people's information on it and they gain access to that, they can scrub those files as well to now get information from all these people that you have files for, or even the business in itself. One of the things that I think people are not as aware of, a lot of people may be aware of those vulnerabilities, but what they're not as aware of are now the IoT devices. So when you introduce IoT devices such as, say, Alexa, Google, any of the Chrome devices, all these types of lights and stuff like that, and you have them on your network, as most people do and businesses do, these, if not locked down on a segmented network, and just put right on your normal network where you're doing regular business off of, these have bugs and whatnot that can cause exposure to the outside, to the internet. So, I mean, that is a very key component, is locking down your IoT devices on a segmented network, which will separate them from your business network. And that's true for most things, wireless networks, all of that. You definitely want to segment your network effectively to lock this stuff down. And I guess that's one of the reasons why it's important to either have somebody that's dedicated for IT, or have a company that comes in and do this, because one of the things that I think is very important is doing assessments on your security on a regular basis, because it's a big job. It's not always time consuming, because a company will have scripts that run on a regular basis that can check vulnerabilities on your network and whatnot. I guess one of the things that Glenn had talked about that I thought was vastly important was two-form authentication, form factor authentication. That is huge, because if you have two-form authentication on all of, say, everything that you log into, or inside apps that you log into, that will give you the ability, you log in, it sends you a text, or you look on a two-form authentication app, and then you can verify that code. Now that's you logging in and accessing that, as opposed to, if somebody else tries to log in, they won't get the code because they don't have that proper authentication, and that is vastly important. So
those are all great and valid points, and I don't think most people think about those other devices that might reside on their network, and that those can be a point of hacking, where we look at them as convenient, right, or almost necessary for life these days. They also can open us up to some vulnerability. I know that one of the things that came up in this conversation several times was talking about emails and what do those look like. So I'm gonna pull up here, just give me a quick second, some examples. And if you could, Mike, talk us through a couple of examples of that.
okay.
Okay. So here is an example email, and hopefully everybody can see this. Let's see if I can do it in slideshow format. Or maybe not. Okay, well, hopefully we can see it there. Can you tell us what we're looking at and what would be concerning about this particular email?
Well, I think the first thing to me is this is something that's containing some type of either attachment or link to another location on the internet. So a couple things that you want to do with this. If you're not expecting a file with a link, immediately I would not open this file. What you want to check is make sure that this is coming from a valid email. And again, you also have to be cautious of email spoofing. So even though it comes from a valid email that you know and recognize, it still may be a spoof of somebody else's email. Something you could do is you could either contact this person via email or another way and just verify that they sent this for you to view. The second thing is that it is an attachment, and a lot of the times attachments are how people would get things on your computer to expose your computer for them to manipulate. So if you don't recognize it, an attachment is something that you really want to be sure that you were supposed to receive. It may be just a link that takes you to another website that might want you to log in, therefore giving them your login information for whatever that website was, because it could be a spoofed website. And a way you can check that is by looking at the address link of the website it takes you to if you have it. I think really cyber awareness dictates that you know what you're getting and where you're getting it from, and are you expecting it or not. And if you're not expecting it, verify that it. It takes a couple extra minutes, but it could save you thousands of dollars by verifying that you're getting something from who you expect it from.
And oftentimes it's just that something doesn't look quite right, or you're being asked for information that you're typically not privy to, or that doesn't really make sense for you to respond to. I know there was one that was going around that said, hey Glenn, I'm in a meeting, send me your contact information. Well, if you're already an employee, I don't really think that Glenn is lacking for your phone number, right? So, or that you're looking for Glenn's phone number. So just a little bit strange. Here's another one of those emails. So if you could point out maybe a couple of things on this one that, again, just don't seem quite right.
Sure. Well, in this one's, it's pretty specific. So it looks like what you have done on this one, possibly highlighted over that link. And within that, when you look at that, when you highlight over the link, it's going to show you where that's going. Now, you want to verify that that's going to take you to a valid site. And if you're not sure it's a valid site, then I would, again, verify with the person that's sending it if it's somebody that you recognize. If you don't recognize it, you don't want, you definitely don't want to click on it. But this is a common email type that they send. It's very easy for them to send something like this that would come from something that looks similar, that may be where you're expecting it from. But once you highlight over the URL for it, the link for it that shows you the URL, it's some off website. And that's the type of thing that they're trying to coax you into.
And one final email. This one happens to be Costco. But the first thing I saw on this one was, if it was coming from Costco, then that probably would be a Costco email address.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a good key point right there. Is a lot of times you're going to get these, and unfortunately you're going to get some businesses that have third-party websites, third-party companies that handle some of their communication. So that is going to be the case, but I find any more people are trying to get away from that. Because of phishing, email phishing, and they want to make sure users can feel comfortable in dealing with these companies. But absolutely, this one coming from Costco, that's not a valid Costco email address. And I'm assuming that if you highlighted over those links, they wouldn't be taking you to a valid Costco website link.
The other thing that I see on this one is, oftentimes there's a threat of some sort. If you don't do this by this time, then this bad thing will happen to you. So in this case, you get paid back your money less 21% since your order was booked for Christmas. There's probably not a form email with that language coming from Costco. But again, it raises a red flag. It could be valid. It could be legitimate, but it's something worth investigating. And instead of clicking the links in taking the time to, contact Costco directly.
And one thing I would suggest is, I am definitely guilty of this. Read through your whole email. Sometimes you get an email that you're dealing with daily and you just click on the link because you're going to go there and take care of what you have to take care of. But definitely read through your whole email to make sure. I mean, sometimes if you see a fuzzy logo, chances are that that is something that's trying to manipulate you into doing something you don't want to. Fuzzy logos, misplaced information. There are key factors, and if you're keeping aware on a regular basis, and sometimes it's hard because we're going through a very busy day and we're going through everything, but you definitely want to make sure if it's, dealing with finances, especially since this is what that is, you want to make sure that you're rereading your emails, you're going to where you're supposed to be going, and you're just doing your due diligence.
And I would say if you're an employee and you've screwed up and clicked the wrong thing, don't wait for it to be a $10 million company issue. Just speak up and say something, because we've all done it. We've all clicked the wrong thing. So it's better to be upfront about it and have IT get right on it. Glenn, I know you wanted to say something about emails.
And I think we talked about this before we got online, and Karen had mentioned it as well. But people will take your email address and they will go to a domain server if they're really after you, and they'll buy something for $10, very similar to your domain. So ours is like communitiesfirstinc.org, and somebody will buy communitiesfirstin and leave the C off and go .org, and then send emails out from me to everyone and say, oh, I need you to give to this link. And then you click the PayPal link you're giving, and guess what? No money is coming to the organization. So you even have to be careful with that, with your donations, and making sure that people are using information that is secure, whether if it's through a PayPal link or through QuickBooks or something like that, to make sure that they're using something that's a secure platform. Because what you'll find is that, like you said earlier, is that you have bots that are scrubbing information, trying to find as many things as possible to get your information. And well, I guess I want to talk about emails a little bit more, but it's one thing that I can think about where people really get themselves in trouble when it comes to cyber with businesses. Is still similar. As you mentioned it earlier about the information that's like in the background, or it might be on your desk, or things that people can just look at and try to find your email. But on Facebook, I have noticed they come up with these things where they'll ask you, and these are phishing schemes, and people have not realized it. And I told a friend of mine, and he actually got caught up in one, and then he hurried up and took it down. But they'll say, oh, answer these 20 questions. And those 20 questions would be, where did you vacation, or where did you go to elementary school? What was your parents' last name? And they'll be asking you all these different questions, and it seems so nonchalant. Like, what place do you want to visit? What's your dream job, your dream car, all those things. And what they're doing is fishing for information. And then what happens is you post it, and then you challenge 20 other people to say, hey, play this game with me. And then you share it. And then if you read the stuff that they're asking you, they're actually just security questions. They're thinking of 30 or 40 or 50 security questions that they're asking you. Or they'll start asking business questions about, like, when did your business start? And when did this happen? So pay attention to those things, because those things have a lot to do with not just business, but with your personal information. If you're sharing that on social media, just understand that all your friends are probably not the people that you think they are. And if it's getting shared, they're just saving it, and they're using that information to try to crack a code on your business and or you personally. Oh, Karen had something.
I do have something that we're talking about, this phishing email that's coming into your business, or one thing that we've had recently happened, and it's so important that you constantly inform and educate your employees to be cognizant of these games. We have had where an executive's email has been spoofed, and emails going out, like Glenn said, or Essence mentioned, that Glenn needs this, or give me this information for Glenn. And they look real, and you want to help your boss and you think that they're asking for this, you're going to try to do whatever the email is asking if you're not wise to the game. So make sure you let your employees know, anybody that's helping you in your business, not to ever give up information, or worse yet, send out a check or anything like that if you are not 100% certain it's coming from your boss. So don't do it until you've talked to them. That's the lesson there. And I have a friend who was just compromised in the last few weeks with her business, that they had checks going to places that her payroll or her accounts payable division was actually sending the checks out, because they had done such a good job of making these emails look like they were coming from companies that they had been doing business with, that they owed the money to. The thing that was not right was the address that the checks were being mailed to. And like I say, most of the time, your financial institution will reimburse anything that comes out of your account that you did not authorize. But until you can prove it and go through all the work to stop it, that money's out of your account. And if you're running on a thin cash flow, you can't afford to have money out of your account that isn't meant to go where it's supposed to go. So always remind your employees how important it is not to take action until they've actually talked to you, the boss.
That's, I think, an excellent point. And those emails are becoming much more common.
They're good.
Yeah, and so Karen, kind of in the same vein, should a business find out that they've had a breach and it's related to their financial institution, what steps should they go through to get things resolved?
Well, first and foremost, contact the financial institution as soon as you're concerned or think there might be something wrong, so they can shut down the account, take it out of the account number that it's in, whatever they have to do to protect whatever's left. Secondly, you'll want to contact all the credit bureaus and make sure that they know that there's been identity theft, and they can notate that on your credit report. You can also shut down your credit to any new inquiries unless you approve it. So if you're worried that they have enough information that they could actually create you and borrow on your good name or your business's name, take that action. It's a little bit more work when you actually need credit, because you'll have to go through a few steps to approve the bureaus to release that information, but it's a good way to help. You may have to file a police report. Don't hesitate to do that. A lot of times insurance companies that reimburse your financial institution will need to have a police report filed. So take the time to do that. Often it's done by the phone, especially now. So it's not like you have to go to the station or anything like that. You just have to give them all the valid information. Make sure you've informed everybody that works with you that you've got a problem. And you may have to contact your vendors to let them know that if you owe them money, it may be delayed until you can get things straightened out. Everything you can do, or the best thing you can do, I would say, is be just vigilant about looking at your account daily. And it will only take a few minutes if you do it on a regular basis. So if it were me and I wanted to sleep well at night, it might be the last activity I do before I close my eyes to sleep, and just knowing that I've checked and everything looks good. I think that's all I have.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I think so often things happen and we get into a panic mode and we don't know what we should do. So being able to walk through that, all those steps seem logical and they seem easy if you prepare yourself that step by step, this is what's going to happen. Not that it would be easy in the moment, but it's certainly a lot more comforting to know how things should progress. So I have a similar question for Mike. If you experience an IT breach or one of these email spoofing things happens to your business, what are maybe like the first couple of steps, maybe before calling your IT specialist, that you should do?
So because you're not going to know what kind of infiltration you've had, I would suggest that the first thing you do is change your password, right? That is absolutely the most important thing you can do. Now, by changing your password, It's hard to say without contacting your IT, because it's a very intensive and important thing that's happening right now, right? You're worried that somebody may have either accessed your email account or accessed your business in some way, or other vendors or credit unions. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you get that information over to whoever is handling your IT, so that they can do multiple things. They can check the headers of the email, which is the behind the scene things that you're not going to see normally. Like, you can see what country it came from, just, those points of origin. Because a lot of times, even when they access your account, and I won't say all, but a lot of these attacks are coming from out of the country. So you'll see origin IPs that are out of the country IP addresses. Then they can immediately see, what steps that IT needs to do to take care of those. So I guess if you find that you've been infiltrated, or it looks like you may have been infiltrated, I think password is number one, and number two would be get a hold of whoever's handling your IT or security. You don't necessarily want to leave it to try to, guessing what you can do, as well as, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just wondering, Michael, do you have any suggestions for the antivirus? Does any of that help when it says update your McAfee or whatever that might be?
Absolutely. So basically, in regards to like antivirus, malware, network security, network vulnerabilities, I would definitely recommend, there's multiple really good programs out there for antivirus, whether it be WebRoot. Some find that Norton is a little heavy-handed, but it's still a good antivirus. McAfee is fairly decent, but the most important things with any of these antivirus softwares is making sure that you're keeping them up to date. And another major important thing is making sure that you're keeping your OS up to date, whether it be Windows, Linux, whatever flavor of OS that you're using. Keeping it up to date is the most important, because the reason why they're doing updates so often is because somebody's infiltrating their systems. So they do updates to create security patches to take those away. If you're a small business, having somebody that's dedicated to IT is really, an important thing. Small, medium, even large businesses, a lot of times they'll have whole IT departments. If you don't have the resources to do that, it is worth the money, in my opinion, to have somebody that can be there to actually take care of those. Because an MSP or a service provider can actually have scripts that are running all the time, and also do regular audits, whether they're monthly, quarterly, or yearly, of whether it's your email, your network itself, for vulnerabilities. So amongst providing protection for you, whether it's antivirus or Windows updates, and checking whatever programs you have installed for security issues, but they're also regularly making sure that your Windows is up to date, or the antivirus of your choice.
I think one more thing, Essence, is that people have to have passwords on their mobile device. I see so many people still today that it just opens. And if you've got your information on there and that device just opens for anybody that picks it up, you're in big trouble. So please make sure you're putting good passwords or good security measures on your mobile devices as well.
Yeah, I think that was a great question, and I think that's a really good point, because how much information is really contained in your phone that if you were to lose it, people would have access to so much information about you. And I have to laugh about that, because we recently got new cell phones, and there was an option for, if your password was input incorrectly too many times, it would wipe your phone.
Oh.
And that seemed a little bit, excessive. But then I thought about it. I'm like, well, that's actually not a bad idea, because, it would still be backed up in the cloud. But then I also had to recognize we have an 18-month-old who loves to play with our phones. So that would just be a huge headache to have to deal with that. But there are those things that are in place. And a lot of times it's about knowing the settings and knowing the purpose for them and whether or not it's the right choice for you. But I think anybody probably would agree that just having a password on your phone is probably a good idea. We have talked about a lot today. I think what we've found is that we need to be prudent. We need to watch our accounts. We need to look at the emails that are sent to us and make sure that we verify who they're coming from, and what the links are, where those links are taking us. Glenn, you talked about credit cards and not allowing folks to store your information, and just being very cautious about how we're interfacing as businesses. And I had to laugh there for a second when Mike said, make sure that you have an IT professional. And although that may seem a little bit biased because that's the work that he's in, I think that any of us, if we were facing a true breach where information was compromised, our accounts were compromised, we would be looking back and saying, I wish I had somebody that could help me with this, or I wish that I had taken those precautions. So it's definitely an important role, and oftentimes we don't know that we need it until something really bad happens. So we just want to make sure that, even if you can't afford a whole department, at least know and understand who can help you with that, and have them on a contract arrangement to assist you when things get critical.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about what we were talking about with just protocol in general, just making sure that you have things in order. Even if you have 5 steps or 10 things that you do in your office, even if you don't have an IT person that makes you think about security and keep it in front of your staff, because I'll tell you, even one of the easiest ways that you'll find out that happens, there are people that literally, and Mike talked about this earlier, but there are people that drive around looking to find Wi-Fi and open access, and you'd be surprised of how many people's networks are just wide open. Like, you can literally pull to the side of a company building and they'll have an open network. You can click it. And that's another thing that people can get you to fish on, is because your IP address can become available to them. So also, as a small business and you're out into the community and you're looking for a network, one of the things that I've seen people get hacked by is that they'll say, oh, this is an open network, let me just click on this one. But when you click on that network and you're attached to it, that leaves a point for them to get into your system and to see what they're, and to basically look into your computer system and see what's going on. And that counts for your cell phone, your laptop. So it's good that if you have like a Wi-Fi hotspot that you're logging directly into, if you have a cell phone hotspot, or if you have something that your job gives you, their own mobile hotspot. But do not just click into networks unbeknown to not even knowing who they are. But then also making sure that yours is locked down, because we changed our Wi-Fi password, and then also to have more than one password. You have a guest password that you give out if you have a guest system. And Mike was talking about separation a little bit earlier, but I'm just digging into it a little bit more, and Mike could probably add more to this. But you can but basically you can have a Wi-Fi password, so when guests come, you can give them that password, so then they can only use that as a guest, and then you can change that password at any time, and then you have your own internal network, because you can give that person that network key, they'll save it in their computer, and then anytime they're by your building again, they're just connecting right back into your network, and you do not know why people are connected to your network sometime until they leave. So that's not always a good thing.
All right, Mike, and then Karen, if you could just give us some final words today to encourage small businesses that, it's not all doom and gloom, and there's something that we can do.
Absolutely. And just to kind of go over a little bit with what Glenn had mentioned, Wi-Fi security is something that is really important, especially with the guest network. I mean, you really only want your office staff to have your internal Wi-Fi, as he mentioned. And what having a guest network can do is port isolation, so that when they log into the network, not only do they not have access to your internal network, but they also don't have access, if it's set up properly, to other devices on that Wi-Fi guest network. So if you have multiple guests logged in, they won't have access to reach each other. So a guest network is definitely very important. I think a couple of the things that I just kind of want to end on is cyber awareness training is always an amazing thing. It helps out. It might just be a refresher, something you already know, but it's always good to kind of keep that at the top of the, the top, because, just to keep you in a routine of cyber awareness. And then change your passwords often. It's definitely not all doom and gloom. And if you lock down your network and you're paying attention to emails, it does make it harder for people to make you vulnerable. It's not impossible, but it does make it harder. And if you change your password, on a scheduled basis, a regular basis, that's a good thing, because if somebody had possibly stored your information on the dark web and they hadn't accessed it yet, but somebody got a hold of it and accessed it later on, you didn't know you were vulnerable, but then you got vulnerable. So a regular change of passwords for your workstation logins as well as your system logins is always good.
And for me, I started this conversation with technology is an awesome tool for convenience, allowing us to do so much more than we ever did. But it's also a challenge to make sure that you're doing all you can to protect yourself to anything that could potentially happen. And it's not a matter anymore of if I am challenged or compromised, it's when. So you just have to be on your toes, paying good attention, and using your technology is a great way to help build your business, and you can protect yourself quite easily just by being aware.
Well, I want to thank Mike and Karen and Glenn for being with us today. I have a few friendly reminders for you. So our next community candor is called Wealthy Wednesday, and we're talking about covering your family assets with life insurance. Oftentimes people don't want to think about life insurance because it also means thinking about death, but it is an important thing to consider for your family and for your legacy. On Friday, July 17th, we're talking about playing the long game, making sure your business succeeds for years to come. And so we want to think long. We don't want to think about just next week or next year, although, sometimes it feels like we need to focus there. If we want to see our businesses endure for generations, then there's some strategic thinking that we need to engage in. As another note, just want to remind you, if you have not registered for the series, it's important for us to have some data and information, and also for us to follow up with you. So you can go to www.tinyurl.com/CFI Building Wealth to do that. Again, another special thank you to Mike, to Karen, and to Glenn for being with us. And thank you so much, Elder Credit Union, for being a sponsor for this series. Well, we hope that you have a good rest of your day and enjoy your weekend. And we will see you next Wednesday. We'll see you next Wednesday for the next session.
Thank you, Essence.
Thank you.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.